Joining me now, criminal defense and civil rights lawyer, CEO of the McBride firm, Joseph McBride. What a pleasure to have you back on the program.
It's good to be here, Kimberly. It's nice to see you. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Thank
Happy
you.
January 6th.
Yes, exactly. No coincidence. So I do appreciate you taking the time, especially today. 4 years later, President Trump has his victory certified. 4 years after Democrats attempted to exploit the events of January 6th to destroy President Trump and to dismantle the MAGA movement. How do you, and you've been such a pivotal, focus and center point of it, how do you put it all into perspective?
Look, God did not abandon the United States of America in this election. President Trump, 45, is who should have been 46, is going to be 47. All of us knew in our hearts and in our minds and what we saw that the election was stolen. There was something wrong with it. We all knew it. And that's what that was the genesis, the root of why people came out on January 6th. We all fought. I fought, you fought, the president fought, good patriots across this country fought, members of Congress and the Senate fought. We did not give up. We did not give in. We never surrendered. I don't think that the other side understood the willpower and the resolve of the American citizen to remain free, free from the boot of tyranny, free from the warrantless intrusion of government into our personal lives, be that if we're private citizens or members of government, like what happened with President Trump at Mar-a-Lago. The American people had enough. I believe that God himself has had enough. And, just to wrap it up and put a bow on it, Kamala Harris herself certified the election today on January 6th. You can't write this stuff better. You can't make it up. This is karma. This is destiny. This is the American dream reinventing itself. And we saw what happened today. President Trump's election was certified. Votes were counted, entered, recorded. And now the next and final step is January 20th. This is vindication for myself, vindication for everybody who's been on the right side of this. And there's certainly the people who went to the Capitol on January 6th.
Yeah, my God. How much have all of us, prayed about this? And it goes to show you it's a phrase and a saying for a reason, which is, justice delayed is not justice denied. And, God willing, these families are going to get some peace. And through their prayers and through President Trump coming into office, he has said that January 6th pardons will be on a case-by-case basis. What does it look like to you? And nobody knows this whole thing better than you do. And just how many cases are there to look at? And I know, like the most egregious, et cetera. Even one person, behind bars, even one day longer is so heartbreaking to me.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, Kimberly. It's over 1,800 cases. There are a lot of cases.
Terrible.
And look, I've been advocating for a general pardon since day one, because I believe that the Metropolitan Police of DC, the Capitol Police, people like Nancy Pelosi, they were the wrongdoers on that day, but for their negligence, but for their purposefulness. A lot of the things that took place on January 6th, including the violence, would have never happened. They're the wrongdoers that day. Also, the punishment has to fit the crime. When you juxtapose what happened at the Capitol against what happened in the Summer of Love, George Floyd, Antifa, BLM, all those riots, nobody even lit a match. The punishment has to fit the crime. The punishment does not fit the crime. So when we're talking about the case by case scenario, the first thing we have to do is say, okay, if there are people who are pardon eligible, do we let them languish in prison, or do we ask the president to say, hey, Mr. President, listen, we understand you want to do this case by case. This could take a year or longer. Commute these sentences. Let these good men out. Rid them of the penalty of incarceration. Rid them of the financial burden of having to pay back the government with these exorbitant fines. Rid them of the intrusion of having parole and probation, constantly monitoring what they do, and so on and so forth. If you want to set up a sentencing commission, if you want to set up a pardon commission, well, go ahead and do that. But if somebody is pardon eligible, and most of these men are, even the ones who were violent, you can't let these guys languish in very difficult situations in jail. So we're hoping, if it's case by case, that he grants commutations alongside of it in order to alleviate the burden of incarceration. Because these men can die at any minute. The conditions
Terrible.
that they're in very, very dangerous prisons with gangsters and murderers from all over the world. It's bad for everybody. It's bad for them. It's bad for their families. They need to come home.
You're absolutely right. And just even one day can be treacherous and life threatening. And I guess that you would probably have a lot of suggestions about how it should be approached in terms of who should be looked at first. I mean, I know that you want the general across the board, which also makes sense. But then from the president's perspective, he's saying, okay, I want to really make sure and certain of all of them. What do you think are some of the criteria?
Well, so it's going to come down as a matter of first impression, first glance, who was violent and who was not violent. Non-violent guys, all of them should be pardoned straight out the gate, not even a question about it, right?
Okay.
So then you get to the violent people and you look at the charges that they have, and it's the 111A1, the 111A2 charge. This has to do with violence against officers. This is where it gets very confusing because in many circumstances, you have good men who were sitting there and MAGA grandma is getting beat up next to them. MAGA grandpa with his cane, the Vietnam veterans getting thrown on the floor. Good men don't go home one night and lay their heads down on their pillow, not having intervened in those situations. So if there were justifiable reasons for good men to take action, to involve themselves, to stop innocent protesters from being hurt, those are the men who should be pardoned. Those are the vast majority of people who were charged with acts of violence at the Capitol. Now, if you have somebody who came down there in the front of the line, they jumped over the barricade and they punched an officer in the face, look, that's bad, right? That's if we're doing case by case, that's not a situation that's pardon eligible. But if you have somebody who's there, it's John the mailman, Joe the cop, Cindy the school teacher, and they're sitting there and they're getting trampled on, they're getting beat on, they're getting shot with crowd control devices. And if they defend themselves or if they defend other people, then they should be pardoned because they should have never been hit in the first place. And it was their right to use force, as we saw with Kyle Rittenhouse, as we saw with Daniel Penny. Sometimes you have to use force when your life or the lives of other people are in danger. So not all violence is criminal. And that's what this is going to come down to. It's going to take a long time. If it's going to be case by case, we're going to have to look at the ins and outs of all these cases. He needs to bring on the people and the lawyers who know this stuff best in order to facilitate this process in the most expedient and intelligent way possible.
So now the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Matthew Graves, will resign ahead of Inauguration Day. Now, some House Republicans say that he must be held accountable, right, for the lives that he has ruined and the prosecutorial norms that he has abused and violated. What do we need to know?
Matthew Graves is a criminal.
Yeah.
He's a communist who hates this country. He could have at any point in time stood up to Merrick Garland and just said, hey, listen, this is wrong. Enough is enough. But they were all in on it. They all wanted the innocent people or some of the people who fractured an occasional law or two at the Capitol to endure the worst possible consequence, to send a message to President Trump and to people who support him that if you're on the wrong side of the issues, that if you're on the wrong side of the political aisle, we will hunt you down. We will kick in your door with the FBI and different types of SWAT teams will use military force against you to drag you across the country, to put you in a gulag pre-trial, to hurt you, to harm you, to break your family, to deprive you of everything simply because you don't agree with us. He knew what he was doing and he's wrong and he should be held accountable. There needs to be an investigation into everything that he has done into the last 4 years of his operation in DC. That goes for Merrick Garland as well. This is going to take work. President Trump only has 4 years to do it. This could take longer than that. So we need a commitment from JD Vance and other people in the party as well to make sure that we get the job done going forward.
Great point. You're absolutely right, because we need the longevity and we need the long-term commitment, because this isn't a process that can just be expedited. No matter how much you want it to be, it could take some time, and you need that to be an extended commitment. So when you think about it, right, the Swamp's, official narrative on January 6th, it never made much sense. And what we found out was the more we learned, the more their narrative, false narrative, collapsed. For example, why would the FBI be interested, in going after everyone and anyone near the Capitol on January 6th except for the mysterious unknown pipe bomber. It just never added up.
Yeah, it never added up. No pipe bomber. Also, the people who put up the gallows and hung the gallows, we saw that imagery was used all over the place in the first year and a half, right? We suspect that the same people who were involved with the pipe bomb were involved with the gallows as well. They're going after everybody but the people who matter because they were never concerned with the truth. They were only concerned with proffering a false narrative, propaganda to the public to get half of the American population to believe what they were selling in order to win the next election. Fortuitously, Americans in their guts don't like to be lied to.
That's
And
correct.
enough of us came out and said, you know what? We don't like what we're doing. It's happening to the other party now. Some Democrats changed votes the other way. Independents swung for Trump. Obviously, the people are not happy with it. Now we need to do something about it. But to your point, this was propaganda from the beginning. This was a witch hunt from the beginning in order to proffer a false narrative to the public, to get the public to believe that President Trump was the head of some lunatic army, and nothing could have been further from the truth.
I know. Trust me. I mean, it's so painful, the whole thing. I did 13 hours of testimony with 7 lawyers, just outrageous stuff. And it was just terrible. It was just terrible. And I'm still doing document production over January 6th and lawsuits against President Trump. It's insane. And it's an insane amount of like legal fees, everything that I've had to pay.
Yeah.
And it's terrible. But imagine if they put you in jail